So I hope you enjoy. And Stephen, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Olga. Thanks everyone for turning up today. Um, Hopefully by the end of this session, you'll have a bit more idea about music publishing and specifically the creative roles in music publishing, which is what I've spent a big chunk of my life doing. So just to give you sort of the format of today, I'm going to talk for a good 45 minutes or so, which sounds like a long time, but hopefully it won't drag on. I'll keep it interesting. And then we can have some Q&A at the end. If you've got any burning questions about music publishing and how that works, then that's like a really good forum at the end for us to discuss that. And I will also follow up by sending you, well, I'll send to Olga and she can distribute to you. I'm going to send like a like a sheet of links to for you to go and do your own exploration or research after this session, so that you can, hopefully it will back up what I'm going to talk about in the next 40 minutes or so, and it will give you an opportunity in your own time to explore further some of the things that I'm sort of referencing and talking about. So hopefully I should get that over to Olga by the end of today, and she can distribute that to you pretty quickly, hopefully. And then and then you, like I said, you while it's fresh in your mind, go and have a look at some of the things that I'm sending through to you. And hopefully they're, like I said, they'll reinforce some of the stuff that I'm going to talk to you about. So I'm just going to start off with giving you like a little bit of my background. Specifically with the music publishing. I have done other things in my career. I've been on the road. I've toured with this band here, the Levelers. Um, back in the 90s, I was their lighting designer, which is where I kind of really cut my teeth with starting to understand the music industry and starting to understand sort of the international side of touring and how it all kind of fitted together. I toured for about 5 years, and kind of went around the planet, which was absolutely great fun in my early 20s. And I ended up, I think the highlight was in 1994 was lighting the Pyramid stage when the Levelers were their Saturday night headliners at Glastonbury. So that was quite a cool thing to do. I think I was like 25, 26 at that point. So that was definitely a cool thing to have done then. Um, what happened was, after going on the road for quite some time, I'd suddenly realized that it wasn't ultimately the life for me. And I had found out about the world of A&R, which I found absolutely fascinating. And I had a couple of friends in London. I'd moved up to London, and I had a couple of friends who had got jobs as scouts, and their job was to go out every night and find bands, which to me just sounded like the best job ever. So I I kind of tagged along with those guys for a bit when I came off the tour, and that ultimately led me to get my first job at EMI Publishing, as a A&R assistant. So A&R stands for Artist and Repertoire, and EMI at that point of time were the biggest publisher of music on the planet. And it was a really exciting job. Like, looking back on it, even though it was a very entry level job in music publishing, it was a brilliant opportunity to just sort of be right in the thick of one of the biggest publishers, well, the biggest publisher at the time on the planet. And just my job was to assist the department in various ways, but the main one was actually, you have to remember, this is before the internet. I don't know if you guys can, any of you can remember that at all, or if that's a thing for any of you. But we used to have cassettes and CDRs, which was the only way that we could share music. So my job was to make, I had a bank of cassette players, and my job was to make copies of any music coming in for the A&R department so they could listen to it. So that was my first job. And they had a really buzzy studio as well, where they used to demo bands. So I remember bands like Elastica and a few other bands. Can't remember any more off the top of it. A band called Heavy Stereo that signed to Creation. So lots of bands were coming through there and doing their first demos for a music publisher. And my job was to liaise with the studio and make copies of those recordings. So that was my first job. I used the opportunity to get a little business card that said Steve Farris, A&R assistant at EMI Publishing. And then once I had the business card, I felt like I could go out and blag into gigs. So I started going out a lot in London and just going and seeing as many shows as I possibly could and really getting up to speed with what was happening. It was kind of at the beginning of the Britpop era in London, so it was an exciting time to be in central London and going out to lots of shows. I did about a year there, and then I got a job as a scout. Like my mates, I got a job at Sony Publishing, which was I think the fourth biggest publisher at the time. And again, that was very exciting. I got given, I had my own office in Soho, a car and a car park, and a Sony credit card, a Amex card, which was kind of a cool thing to have. And then basically my job was to go out and drive all around the United Kingdom and find every studio, every rehearsal room, every manager, lawyer, booking agent, anyone that where music was being made and music was being new music was happening. Because my job was to scout it out and bring it into the company, into the A&R meetings. So that was my job. I did that for 2 years. Um, I really thoroughly enjoyed it. It was great fun. I got to travel around the UK. Like I said, I had all my expenses. I had a nice car, and I just literally drove around everywhere. I went all up to the top of Scotland, all around Ireland, over to Wales, down to the West Country. And um, when I first started, I was getting no, because remember I was getting CDs or CDRs or cassettes being sent, because that was before the internet. So by about 6 months in, I was getting like a bin liner of cassettes and CDs to listen to every month. So my traveling had worked, and I was starting to get music sent to me. So that was my job as a scout. After 2 years of doing that, I was allowed off the hook to sign artists. And I was promoted to an A&R manager, and I was able to start to actually put contracts and offers together for artists, and to and to give advances. So I could find a band that I liked. I could speak to their manager, speak to their lawyer, suss it out, present it to the people at the work, my managing director, and if I got the thumbs up, I could go ahead and sign their publishing rights, and give them, we, like the budgets were kind of good. Like I'm talking multiple tens of thousands of pounds in terms of advances that I was able to give out at that point in time. So that was quite an exciting time in my life. Whilst I was at Sony, I signed, the key things I signed were Snow Patrol. I worked across their first two albums, and another band from Scotland called Bell and Sebastian. I worked across their first three albums. And I did a couple of other deals. There was a really cool act from Manchester called Ray and Christian, and I did what's called two sub-publishing deals, where I signed other publishing companies, and I was signed label down, publishing company down in Brighton called Skint Records, which was the home of Fatboy Slim. I didn't have Fatboy Slim's publishing, but there were lots of other artists that were around at the time whose publishing we did pick up. And then I signed another deal with a guy called CMC Music, and part of that deal, we ended up getting a small share on Umbrella by what's her name? it will come back to me. My memory recall on this time of day is a bit bad, but it will come back to me. So yeah, it was a big song, Umbrella, you know the one. Um, so yeah, so we I had a good time there. I had some dance hits as well. We had some big. It was the big. It was the dance era. There was some big hits, and so that was good fun. After that, I moved on to another role, independent company called 7 p.m. Music. And I had a different role there, which is called a song plugger. So my job there was I was working with an artist called Marcella Detroit, and she was looking for co-writes. So this is another part of music publishing. So my job was to get her co-writes, and I got her working with Emma Bunton, who was Baby Spice, and I think she got a cut on her album. After that, I worked at a company called On the Fiddle, which is again these guys, the Levelers, those guys there, and that was doing catalog, which was again slightly different. So I wasn't working on brand music. I was brand new music. I was working on music that was already out and already released and had been signed. And what I was doing was acquiring rights. So that was again like another part of publishing that I hadn't done before, but it's really big news currently, like the world of acquiring publishing rights. I don't know if you've read any of those headlines about people selling their publishing for $200 million or whatever. Well, I was doing that, but at a much smaller level. I bought the rights back to the Levelers' first album, and then I acquired rights back from other deals they had, and I set up a publishing company to administer those rights. And I did a deal with a company called Cobalt, who were a fledgling publishing company at the time. So I got involved with catalog. So at this point, I've gone from an assistant to a scout to an A&R manager to a song plugger to someone that is now looking at catalog. I did a good stint there. Um, after that, I got a job working with the guys that I'd signed. Back in the day, Snow Patrol, they set up a publishing company and asked me to come along and run it. It was called Polar Patrol. Um, we ended up signing some rights. We looked after Snow Patrol for North America. We had got some rights for them over there, so I was looking after those. The band who I'd worked on the first three albums, Belle and Sebastian, we ended up signing an album with them, which was album number 9. So you can see how my life keeps on looping back on itself with artists that I've worked with. So that was good. There was another artist we signed there called Nadine Shah, who's currently just kind of kicking off at the moment. She's very good. We signed an artist called Here We Go Magic from America, who are amazing, very good. So we signed quite a few things. We signed Bo Bruce, who we had a top 10 album with, who was on The Voice, was a sort of a finalist in The Voice over here. So and I suppose from that period in time, the biggest thing we signed at Polar Patrol was a guy called Johnny McDade. Now Johnny ended up getting some really big co-writes with Ed Sheeran on his Multiply album. So we, as a little independent publisher, were suddenly having our writer co-write with one of the biggest artists on the world in the world, and we were suddenly, things kind of went crazy for us as a little independent publisher, because I was having to approve all of the licensing, because with the Ed Sheeran album, it was just going nuts, and we just I had to approve all the things for like karaoke licenses, songbook licenses, the lyrics and the notation in songbooks for the ukulele book and the piano book and whatever. Because we had a share in the copyright, I had to do all these approvals. And then obviously there was a song called Photograph that had a massive airplay hit in America. So it was a very interesting time there. That came to an end, and then I worked at a booking agency called 13 Artists, and the agency, they look after, so they're the booking agents, and they look after artists like Radiohead and Arctic Monkeys and Royal Blood. So they're a really big independent agency, and my role there was to bring in artists to the agency. I brought in a couple of artists into the agency, one called Seagirls, who went on to have a #1 album, and a band called The Academic, who was signed to Interscope in America. And also I set up a publishing company there, and I ran that. And the two bands that I signed whilst I was there was a band from Australia called the Psychedelic Porn Crumpets, or this lot here. No, this, I get it right. The other lot, this lot here, that one. Um, and that they yeah, that I signed, worked across their first 3 albums, and signed another brand from the UK called Bilk, who are just sort of picking up at the moment. They're playing like 500 capacity venues in the UK at the moment. They just sold out a tour. So those are the bands I signed there. So I've been involved like as a publisher for around 20 years in my career, and signed and worked with a lot of artists that have won Brit Awards, Mercury Awards, all sorts of stuff over the years. So that's been my story as a publisher. So I wanted to tell you that story, and I wanted to explain what my progression has been in the business, because I think that it will help you understand what music publishing is about, and hopefully it will help illustrate some of the things I'm about to talk about. So let me just take a quick drink of water. So that's my journey to date, pretty much. I've done a few things that I'll tell you at the end, that I work as a consultant now, and I've done a few things in publishing with that. But that's been my sort of career to date. So I'm just going to talk about what music publishing is. So I'll just give you a bit of an idea about what it is if you're not clear. So music publishing was conceived in the 1880s as a way of protecting the intellectual property of a composition when replicating sheet music became popular. Over the years, music publishing has become a multi-million-pound global business, administering the copyrights of songs by recording artists. So I think that's like a definition of what publishing is. It's like the creative ideas of composition and writing a song and writing a lyric and the melody, and it's then turning that into a copyright, and then it's collecting the income on that copyright. I think that's the best sort of way of describing it. So it's really important, like if you're an artist, which I presume a lot of you are, or most of you are, or songwriters, this is the backbone of your income as a composer of music. This is the money that will see you through in the end. The more copyrights you have out there, the more they are performing, the more they are generating income, the more money you're going to earn, and the more value your publishing has as a writer and as a composer. So the key sources of income for a publisher are performance, which is radio airplay. In the UK, we like the main station here is Radio 2, and which is a BBC station. And if you're getting like a play on their drive time show or their breakfast show, so when they've got the biggest audience, which is about 8 million people, it's worth around between about 50 and 60 pounds a play for the performance income. There's lots of other stations are a lot less, down to sort of a few pounds for a play. But I think the thing to work out is if you're getting airplay as a songwriter and as an artist, and you get a track that's playlisted. So a playlist on radio is usually around 10 plays a day. So if you're getting approximately between 40 and 60 pounds a day per play, and you're getting 10 plays per day, then you can soon see that adds up. You know, that's £400-500 a day from one radio station in one country. Now, when I saw what happened with Ed Sheeran and Photograph and our share in that song, where suddenly it's A-listed in this country, but it also is in France, Germany, Italy, Spain, Portugal, you know, all around Europe. Uh, and then it's playlisted all around America, and then it's playlisted in Australia and whatever. And you can just do the maths on all those figures adding up, and that song was playlisted everywhere. And you can soon see that those songs that get on radio play all over the planet can start to generate significant income in a very short period of time. And that is all collected via your performing rights society, which then goes back to you as the writer, and the publisher collects a share as well. So radio airplay is still like a very important part of publishers and songwriters' income. Television, whenever you hear anything on television, it will be reported, it will be collected at some juncture. So again, TV is a really big earner for performance income. Shops over here in the UK, I don't know what it is in different territories per se. I've got no idea, but like every shop, if it has music in the shop, they have to have a PRS license. And the PRS then charge them, I don't know, so I don't know exactly what it is. It's maybe a couple of £100 a year to be able to, for the right to play music in the shops. And this is why, as I discovered as a publisher, why I discovered charts are so important, and chart positions are so important, because the PRS don't know, they haven't got the time or the inclination even to go around to every shop and record what they're playing in a shop for 8 hours a day in a cafe or at a hairdresser's or whatever. So they use charts, airplay charts, as a rough barometer of what's going on out there in shops. So I learned that getting a high chart position makes it so that the PRS use an amalgam of information to distribute the money that they're getting in from shops. So getting in charts, getting in airplay charts does make a difference, as I discovered, in the UK at least. So shops, that's quite one that most people don't really know or understand about. The other area that can generate a lot of money is your live shows. So when your song is performed at a gig or a festival, in the UK, it's 4.2% of box office. So you can work out if someone's playing the O2 Arena, which is 20,000, and the average ticket price there is I would say around £100. Go to see a show, that you can soon see that 4.2% of that does actually add up to being quite a lot of money that is going back to the songwriters via the publishers. So you can see that if you have an artist that is touring globally and is playing a lot of shows, and you're registering the set lists every night, then you can see that that starts to add up again to, can be a significant amount of money. So those are the other area in performance income is streaming, so Spotify and Deezer and all that sort of stuff. So it's approximately, now please don't quote me on this, because it sort of varies and changes, but it is approximately, on 1 million streams, it's approximately £500 that goes to the publishing income. And most of that, there is what I'm going to talk about in a minute, there's a bit is mechanical income, but most of it is performance income. So that again gets distributed by the streaming services via your distributor, and then it comes back like via your performing rights income, by your performing rights organization and your publisher. So it does all creep back to you. So like £500 on 1 million streams doesn't sound like too much, but then you start to look at some of this artists and the big streams, and there are increasingly more and more artists getting 1 billion streams. So that's 100 times 500. So you're again looking at those sort of figures, and we're starting to work out that there's a lot of money starting to roll in there from streaming on the publishing front. So yeah, I think that's a like an important thing to not forget on your streaming income as well. So performance income is radio airplay, TV gigs, festivals, streaming, and shops. Mechanical income comes from the copying of the song. So that's the performing of the song. Mechanical income comes from the copying of the song, which is CD, cassette, vinyl, and a little bit of streaming as well. So again, every time an album is pressed or manufactured, you have to pay a mechanical royalty, which then gets assigned back to the publisher or via what's called a mechanical collection society. So that's they're like the big two sources of income. And then in every publishing company, you have a back office of admin people. So um, like I've recently been in and out of Sony because I've been doing some deals with them there. And I think they've maybe got 10, 12 people in the creative side. So in A&R and sync, maybe 15 in total. And then they've got like 100 people just sat there processing royalties and registering songs. So the back end of music publishing is very admin heavy. But I'm here to talk about the creative side of it, because that's been my background. I've got an understanding of the legal side of it, and I've got an understanding of the admin and the copyright and the royalties, because I've ended up running companies, so I've had to learn all that stuff along the way. But it's not my area of specialism. My area of specialism is the two creative roles, which are A&R and sync. So I'm just going to sort of pause there and just say, like, I think it's really important to sign up to your performing rights organization in your territory. Um, I think that if you're going to start collecting income on your songs, and you're playing shows, and you've got music up on Spotify or whatever, then you need to register your songs correctly. And I think that's like something that if you take one thing away from this session with me today, is get your songs registered, and then register your set lists. And then you might start to earn some money from your copyrights. Okay, so I'm going to now talk about the two creative roles. So A&R, which, as I said, stands for artist and repertoire. So A&R are like the frontline team of the company that engage with artists and songwriters and their management. So my job, like, I go out every week and I go to all these gigs and shows, and I go and talk to managers and to lawyers and to booking agents and to whoever. And then I would come back, and then I'd have an A&R meeting where I play the hot new tune of the week. We'd all be sat there, we'd all be talking about what was going on, what was getting airplay, what was being signed. And so like scouting is like a big part of the A&R process. It's finding the music, it's connecting with the songwriters, it's connecting with their managers, with their lawyers, and it's about bringing in the hot new music into your company. So like I said, this required me going out. Like I was often out 5 nights a week. And I was going to up to 3 or 4 shows a night in London. And I was going to showcase events, I was going to conferences, I was going to festivals, anywhere there was music and I needed to see it, I was there. And then I was reporting that back into the team at Sony when I was working there. So scouting is a big part of it. Bringing in new music, landing in new music, and making your team aware of it is like a really big part of A&R. So it requires a lot of going out. So that was That was a good whilst I was younger. I'm not sure I could do it now. Though having said that, things have changed quite a lot since I did that back in the 90s, because you've got the internet. The internet came along, um, and a lot of companies now use data and data analytics, and they've got very clever data sort of scouting stuff. Initially I was quite skeptical or cynical about these data scouting tools, but as time's gone on, I can kind of understand why they're there, and I can kind of understand why they have a purpose in today's market, because there's so much music being released that it's impossible to, I don't know what I don't know what, there's something stupid like 10,000 tracks a week being uploaded to Spotify. So it's really difficult to keep on top of all the new music, and also everything kind of got more global as well. So when I first started at A&R, I couldn't imagine signing stuff from America or Australia, and I've ended up signing artists from those places. So the industry's got more global, and also there's just so much music being made now. So having anything that helps pinpoint you and focus you into something, I can see as a massive benefit. So a lot of the companies do have data and analytic tools. I've never used one myself. No, I have. I have. That's a lie. I have had some information in the past for sure that's come from data. Um, but what what I gather is that they work on an algorithm that works with it scrapes information from like Instagram and TikTok, and also Spotify and Deezer and whatever else. And what they're looking for is they're looking for spikes in activity. So the A&R teams get all this information, and they then are pinpointed on several acts a week where you've seen like a massive spike in activity. They've put out a new song, they've got a huge amount of new followers, and that's got a huge amount of new listens. Then it will kick something off in the algorithm. So data is an important thing these days, and if you want to cause attention, then you need to have a spike in activity to get that. So that's how a lot of scouting is done these days. It's like a tool, I suppose. So yeah, that's the world of scouting. Um, then A&R management. So like I said, once you've done your scouting and you've found some artists that you want to sign, and you're allowed to have a budget, you can then start signing artists. It's quite a commitment to sign an artist, because every deal that you do as an A&R person, you're being judged upon by the people in accounts, basically. So that's quite a mad job to do, quite a high pressure thing, because if you get it wrong and you sign three acts that don't quite mature into big selling artists, then you're not going to have a job as an A&R person for very long. So you need to kind of get it right, and you need to get the level of deal right. I think one of the things I found most frustrating being an A&R person when I was an A&R manager was when you found something quite early, and you develop a relationship with them, and you were talking about a deal and an offer, and then suddenly, like, I don't know, Warner Chappell or like a Universal or another one of the big publishers they'd also been talking to them as well, and then you can get into a bidding war, to win the artist, or you have to try and sort of what's the word, uh, win their trust. But ultimately, if there's a manager and a lawyer involved, they're looking at the money. So some deals can go crazy, and I've been involved in a couple of those in the past and sort of pulled out at various points. But yeah, some deals can go kind of mad. Um, and when I say mad, I'm talking like hundreds of thousands of pounds, potentially even millions of pounds being thrown at something when two companies are locked in, or three or four companies are locked into a bidding war with publishing. It doesn't happen very often. I think last year the two acts over here were Fred again, and Last Dinner Party were the two acts that had bidding wars going on for for their publishing rights. So yeah, that's one thing that I didn't particularly like as an A&R manager, was having to fend off the competition. But I usually got into things quite early, and I think that's the key. But you also have to give advances. You know they're after money. Everyone's after money, and advance is just that. You have to, when you give an advance, you have to earn that money back. That money has to come back through all those sources I mentioned earlier on, to pay back the advance. So that's the sort of the strange world of publishing A&R and advances there. So the creative side of it, which I loved and I still kind of do a little bits of today, is having a relationship with the songwriter, and them playing you their songs really early. Quite often I was getting songs from my writers before they played them to the label, or before they played them even to the manager sometimes. And having that relationship where you're feeding back on songs is great. It's one of the highlights of the job for me, because I always think that the song is the very kernel of the entire business. And without the song, nothing else really exists. There's no gigs, there's no merchandise, there's no streaming, there's no anything. So the song is the sort of the very hub of everything. So to be part of that, I always found like a very special thing. And then so it's like offering feedback, and suggestions on everything to do with the music. So in the past, I've been consulted by my artists on track listings, single selections, mixes, remixes. I've been checked mastering. Um, I've been involved in helping out getting co-writes, and suggesting producers. So, that part of the job I've thoroughly enjoyed. Like that's a real creative part where you can play a part in the creation of the music and the songs, and you have a small role to play in that artist's or songwriter's trajectory. And I think that's for me has been like a really good part of doing this job. Another big part of being an A&R manager at a publishing company is championing your artist for the rest of the team. Now, when I was working for big companies like Sony, or when I've been working for independent companies like Polar Patrol, who run through bigger companies like Cobalt or Warner Chappell, um, your job is to be the champion for that artist within the company, and to get everyone excited, to get everyone like backing the band, and making sure that people turn up at shows. And if the band are touring internationally, making sure that people from your company are turning up to the gigs, or they can drop into the office when they're in LA or whatever it is. So again, like you've got to be a real champion of the band at that point. So that's like the A&R. There's another sort of, and I did mention it earlier because I did it for a bit. There's another sort of side element to A&R, which is called song plugging, which is where they work with non-performing songwriters. So there are a lot of songwriters, like the guy I mentioned, Johnny McDade, who co-wrote with Ed Sheeran. There are a lot of songwriters out there that don't necessarily go on the stage and perform the songs, but they're in the studios co-writing the songs. So they're called non-performing songwriters. And working with those guys is like another strand of A&R song plugging. So your job then is to get your songwriter in the room with the artist. That is the job, and it sounds quite simple, but it's incredibly political, and very you have to be a political animal to be a song plugger, because you've just got to be able to uh, engineer your person into the room with the big artist, and all the big artists have like a protective thing around them. And so you have to penetrate that and kind of get in there with your artist. So that really involves relationship management, and really involves like having really great relationships with people at record companies to say, you've just signed an artist. I think your artist would be a good fit for my songwriter. Can we organize a session? And then you get them to work together. And then as a publisher, you may get 30% or 50% of the song, and you register your share. And then you keep your fingers crossed that the album gets, the song gets put on the album. And then you start earning money from that endeavor. And that does actually happen like reasonably often. So maybe maybe something you can do is go back and look at your favorite artists and go and have a look at all the co-writers that are on all those artists. A lot of especially pop stuff, but not necessarily some rock stuff as well, some indie stuff, all co-write. And you can see that there's usually a handful of songwriters globally that have got cuts on a lot of big artists. So it's definitely worth having a look in the credits on a CD or going on Wikipedia. There's a lot of information on Wikipedia about who's the co-writes in the songwriting credits, and then you can just click on that and go back to the songwriter and see who else they've worked with, and you can see that a lot of the time it's the same songwriters that are writing with a lot of the big artists, and they've all got publishing deals, and they've all had a publisher that's helped put them in the room with the artist. So that's like the world of song plugging. So that's with non-performing songwriters. Okay, so I'm just going to have a sip of water. So that's the world of A&R. It's a fascinating world. It's a world I've been involved with, like I said, for a big chunk of my career. I don't necessarily do that so much anymore. I'm more in the world of advising people these days, but I still have a dabble once in a while. So the other creative role of a music publisher is it's called synchronization, and synchronization is, or it's abbreviated to sync, which is the pairing of music with visuals. So whenever you turn on a TV, whenever you go to the movies, whenever you see an advert, somewhere down the line, someone's done a deal, or there's some money being collected somewhere, or someone's licensed some music somewhere. So uh, that is that quite often is the sync department from the publisher that does that makes that happen. They have relationships with the key people in sync are called music supervisors, and music supervisors, their job is to they usually work for the TV production company or the movie production company or the production company that's making the advert, and they are the ones that will source the music for the show or for the advert, and then they are the ones that will license the music via the publishers and the record companies. So with sync, you have to remember there are two in one song, two copyrights. So you've got the publishing copyright, and then you've got what's called the master's copyright, which is the recording. So the recording is one specific thing, so that usually pertains to a record label. And then the other part of the copyright is the publishing copyright, and that usually is to do with the songwriters. So there are two things for a music supervisor has to clear two copyrights. So what happens a lot of the time, like my like some of the things that I've done in the past is I've invited music supervisors along to my gigs of my bands, and make sure they get in. I usually maybe meet them before and buy them some food, make sure they get into the show, make sure they've got good seats, make sure they've so I'm, as a representing the artist, I'm doing my best to ingratiate myself with the music supervisor and to bring them along to the show. So that is a thing that publishers do for sure. We as publishers, we have close working relationships with music supervisors. Now, I went on a journey where because I've been mainly involved in A&R, but when I started running independent publishing companies, I realized that I needed to up my game with the world of sync. So I went out to Los Angeles 3 times and went to sync events out there and met music supervisors out there. Um, most sync happens in LA. And it can, a big sync can really a make a lot of money in the license, and b, it can get an artist into a big movie or into a big TV show. Um, so my advice, if that's an area of the business that you are keen on getting into, um, then my advice is absolutely to start to study. Like if you watch a program on Netflix, there'll be music supervisor in the credits, and you can start to see who's music supervising what. If you've got Amazon Prime or whatever it is, or if you go to the movies, you can start to actually see who's music supervising. And a lot of the time they're actually on social media. So you can actually start following them, and some of them are reasonably approachable. So and more, because as time goes on, like I read the other day, Spotify said that over 50% of their music now that they're uploading is coming from self-releasing or independent artists. So the music supervisors are now having to deal with independent artists a lot more, or self-releasing artists a lot more. So it is a thing now. There's some shows in the UK where they really champion new music. There's one called Made in Chelsea, which is like a dreadful program, but like the music's banging. The music's really good, and they really pick a lot of new indie guitar bands to play it, and it's probably their first sync stuff. So yeah, so that's an exciting area of publishing. I think it's really, I've always found it fascinating that your music can be used in all these different ways. I've been involved. The ones I've been involved in as a publisher, I work with this artist called Luke Temple, who he makes very mellow, ethereal music. He's got a beautiful voice, and it's usually quite soft accompaniment with kind of more acoustic instruments. And the music supervisors absolutely loved Luke. So Luke got a Westpac Bank advert in Australia, and a Jacobs Coffee advert round Europe. So both of those brought him in quite a significant amount of money. And one of the interesting things that I learned was, especially with the Westpac Bank advert, was we negotiated for what's called a term. So it was 3 months, and then if they wanted to use that song again, they would have to pay the same amount of money, again, as a license. And the advert was really successful in Australia, so they extended the term, and so they had to pay the money again, and then they extended the term again. So what was initially a $40,000 for the publishing, and then 40,000 for the masters, so then became 120,000 because it was picked up 3 times. So you can soon see that if you do the right deals and you've got the right negotiations on the back end, and you've got the term all sorted, and you've got your licensing there, these things can yield some significant cash. They don't happen very often, not just as but they do happen. I think that's a good way of describing sync. Got another advert with Bacardi, the drinks brand, with a guy called Kidder that I was working with at the time. That was really interesting, because they ended up using the stems. So not the actual recording, but the stems that came from the studio, and they did their own slightly different version for the advert. So it's very important to have stems. If you're make sure you got your stems in cloud storage, so accessible. Also make sure that you've got an instrumental version. A lot of the time they don't like using vocal versions because they clash with the dialogue. So they want an instrumental version. So make sure you have an instrumental version. So there's things that I've learned along the way through through trial and error. We also got a movie trailer for a big American movie called Edge of Tomorrow. And that was an interesting one because movie trailers have a separate budget to the movie because it's a marketing budget, so they pay a lot of money for the music. And again, that was really interesting because we did a deal for the original trailer, which went out on YouTube, and it did something like, I don't know, I can't remember what it was off the top of my head. It was about 4 or 5 million plays overnight. And then because the trailer was so successful, we then tripped through all the back end negotiations on the sync, and it was then up on the website. It was used in theaters. It was used as the kind of the main trailer. So again, that generated significant amounts of money, not necessarily on the initial usage, but the further usages down the line. So that's something to bear in mind. So yeah, I've been involved with a few big syncs in my time. It's always, so as a publisher, your job is to be really responsive, to work with the music supervisor really closely, to, if they need files, if they need slightly different versions, if they need stems, instrumentals, you have to be there with them very quickly, delivering those files. So yeah, that's been, they're the kind of the two key roles of a publisher and the creative side. Now as a consultant, I'm, as Olga said, I'm a Hemi mentor amongst other things. But I've also been advising an indie label on setting up a publishing company, which ran through Sony Publishing. So I've been involved in sort of setting that up and helping out with negotiations. I've worked with a label who put out an artist called Eva Cassidy, who's quite famous. And my job there, because she had done a lot of covers, she covered other people's songs. She hadn't written them herself, but she covered them. So, and they were all with different publishing companies. So my job there was to contact the sync departments before the album was released and let them know that this was coming, and give them the files early on so that they could pitch for sync opportunities. And then I worked for a company called AKQA, which are a big online marketing company, and they had they wanted to do what's called a corporate showreel, which is where they when they're doing meetings and presentations, they've got a showreel of their work, and they'd done a lot of work with the BBC on a David Attenborough program. And the music that was used in the David Attenborough program was by Hans Zimmer, who's probably one of the biggest composers on the planet at the moment, and does a lot of work in sync. And my job was to clear the master rights with the BBC and the publishing rights with Universal on behalf of my client AKQA, which I did. And then they were able to use that music in their showreel. So yeah, I'm still involved as a consultant in various sort of bits of projects, but I'm not necessarily frontline A&R anymore. I think I've talked for a bit now. Hopefully you've got some bits and pieces of information from that, and hopefully I hope that my career story has illustrated some of the real life things that happen in the creative side of music publishing. If you're an artist, I would say absolutely get your head around music publishing. It is the big part of your income. It's protecting your copyrights. There's a lot of potential to create opportunities for your other bits of your career. And if you can develop a relationship with a publisher and have a good relationship with your publisher, then that can be a very powerful thing throughout your career. So yeah, I'd absolutely recommend getting your head around music publishing for sure. I think Olga, are we ready for some questions? If anyone's got any questions would like to ask me while I'm here.
Yeah, I think Stephen, we had a couple of questions in the chat. Maybe you would like to check
Okay.
first.
Have a quick look. Oh yes. Rihanna, thank you very much. Yeah, that was it. Umbrella, Rihanna. Got there in the end. Thanks for the prompt. Uh, Brilliant. So yes, the company that I signed had a small. One of the songwriters co-wrote "Umbrella" with Rihanna. That was great. So yeah, that was a good one. Okay, so let me have a look at some of these questions. Are there any, what do you think about monetization on YouTube? It's poor. I think is is the only thing I can work out. Like the monetization just seems. I think they negotiate stuff really not great at the beginning, and I think it's crept up over time. But if you look at the payouts on all the streaming services, YouTube come like way at the bottom, and and most streams that happen globally happen on YouTube. So I think that there's some more work for the business to do. I mean, it's very interesting. I don't know if any of you are taking notice of what's happening at TikTok at the moment. Universal Publishing have just pulled all their copyrights off of TikTok because they're saying they weren't paying enough. And I just read this afternoon, American Congress has asked TikTok to either sell or to stop operating in America. So TikTok are coming under a lot of fire at the moment. And it's because they don't seem to be paying people properly, or they seem to be riding roughshod over people's copyrights and not really bothering about it. So so I'm hoping that hopefully after this TikTok stuff, like I'm hoping that the big publishing companies and whatever take aim at YouTube at some point, because YouTube/Google have made a lot of money out of songwriters' copyrights, and I don't think they're paying them enough money personally. That's my personal opinion. Okay, what's that? Does it make sense to conclude agreements with publishing companies for a single country, region, or continent, or is it better to have one global partner? I would say having one global partner, like just this business is global now. There's no territories, don't really seem to make any sense anymore on the internet, particularly. I would say absolutely do a global deal. I think the deals where it was just one territory, just like that was kind of back in the 90s or whatever. I think most deals are kind of for the world these days. Okay, what's there? I have three questions, three at once, huh? Brilliant. How would you start building a sync strategy for a Hungarian band? Is it important to sing in English? Okay. Are you joining the Great Escape Festival? Right. Okay. So how would you start building a sync strategy for a Hungarian band? Well, I think it doesn't matter where you're from. Your strategy is the same. The strategy is making great music. Your strategy is having the files ready, and your stems and your instrumentals, and making sure that they're easily accessible. It's being easily contactable. A lot of things that I hear from music supervisors who contact independent artists or self-releasing artists is that they send them an email and no one gets back to them, and they're on a 24-hour turnaround for a sync. So if no one gets back to them on an email, then they will quickly pass that up and go on to something else. So being contactable is really important. And in terms of strategy, I think just start to tune in. Like I said earlier on, start to tune in to music supervisors, start to tune in to where the opportunities are. I think that's really important. I think that you can, like, I went to Bush, the showcase event in Budapest last year before maybe. Really great event, and there was a whole strand on sync there. Like there was some big music supervisors that were coming there. So go to events, go and meet people, find out about their world. I think that's a really good thing, and make sure you've got your files ready and you're contactable. Is it important to sync in English if it's your aim to make music for movies? I think this is a thing I come across with a lot of artists that I do mentoring for from your part of the world. I think what I advise them to do is to do some songs in their native tongue and some songs in English. I think that, and again, with your social media, do some posts in English and some posts in your native tongue. I think it's important to be proud of your language, and it's important to represent that. But obviously, English is a dominant language, and I think that, you know, it's prudent to do some songs in English as well. So if you are multilingual, then please do some in English and some in your native tongue. What's really interesting at the moment is that Spanish is really coming through as a dominant language in music. You see a lot of Latin music getting huge amounts of streams, and you've seen some hits coming across that are sung not in English. So I think things are changing, but I think my advice would be to do some in English and some in your native tongue. Um, are you joining the Great Escape Festival? Well, yes, I am, because I live in Brighton, where the Great Escape is. So it happens about 10 minutes down the road there, 10 minutes walk. So yes, I will be there. If you're coming, then please feel free to reach out to me on social media or whatever. And if you're playing, then if I can get to your show, then I will. Okay, how difficult is it to get your tracks to be played on BBC Radio if you're not from Great Britain? Yeah, it's a bit tricky, I would say. I think the thing is that non-GB tracks are played, but you probably have to have something going on in your own territory at a significant level to get the attention of UK radio. So you can't, like, what's interesting is that like over here, um, we have a thing called the BBC Uploader, and you can upload your songs. You can upload your songs to the BBC Uploader if you're UK based, and we have this thing called BBC Introducing, and you can get your songs listened to by the local DJs from whatever area you're at. But as far as I'm aware, it's only for UK artists. Unfortunately, my best advice is to have a hit in your own territory, and hopefully that migrates to the UK. You know, obviously we do have airplay for artists from all over, but they're usually successful in their own territory first, I think, if that makes sense. Okay, could you get us a show at the Great Escape Festival? Unfortunately not. I'm not part of the organizational team. I just live in Brighton and I've attended it for many years. But there are what's interesting about the Great Escape, there are more and more opportunities because actually what I've learned as a Brighton native, and I've gone to most of them over the years, I think they didn't have it when the COVID happened, and when I was the dad of a really young family, I don't think I went for 1 year, but I think I've been for pretty much every other time. And what's really interesting is there's more and more like side shows happening now. There's more and more non-official shows happening, a bit like South by Southwest. So if you can find out promoters who put those shows on, then you maybe can kind of get around the side of the sort of very political sort of process that goes into choosing the bands for the main event. But you know, I think they do have if it I don't know where you're from, whoever asked that question, but like they do have like different export offices do have stages and do have from Slovenia. Okay. Maybe if you've got a Slovenian music export office, I've been to Central and Eastern European showcases before at Great Escape. So yeah, there's usually some export offices that are coming over here and that are bringing artists with them. So maybe that would be the route in. Um, if you're in London on May the 15th, come over for our show at the 100 Club. Okay, excellent. At the 100 Club, well, it's a cracking venue, home of punk rock. The Sex Pistols and all those, but Susan the Banshees used to play there back in the day. Strangely, though, it's got pillars in front of the stage, which is a bit weird, but but yeah, great. If I am there, I will. I do go up to London reasonably regularly, but it's about an hour away from me. So again, you know, do like send me more details on social media, and thank you very much. And if I'm in town, then I will happily pop along. I always like to see a show. So yeah. Okay, I think there's thank you very much for the list. Great. Any do pop some more questions in while we're here. I think I've got another 5-10 minutes or so of this. So if you've got any burning questions about music publishing or whatever, do fire away, or sync or whatever. This is the opportunity. Any more coming in? Come on. Come on. I've just talked to you for an hour. Come on. So if we are listed with oh, okay, yes, just do with your go with your
Can I just speak? Is that okay?
oh sure, yeah, sure.
So if we're listed with the Slovenian music publishing thing, so we have two in Slovenia. One is IPF and one is Sazas. If we're there, are they also collecting the publishing rights from other countries if we get some airplay there? Or do
Yes,
we have to do some forms or?
no. All the music collection societies have what's called reciprocal deals, where they have deals with each other, so to collect performing rights around the planet. So if you register with one place, they've got deals with, your song will go on a database that then gets shared with all the other performing rights organizations. So it's a good question, that one. But yes, you should, your performance income should be collected globally by your performing rights organization.
Okay.
What happens with publishers is that because they've got a commercial interest in the song, they will chase that money more hard than if you leave it go in the performing rights system. So like if you've got a publisher, the publisher is actively collecting the money and taking the money, whereas the performing rights organization, it does eventually filter back, but it's probably a little bit slower. But it's a good question. I'm just going to see this one from did that answer your question? Good. They're just to see this one from what are the usual percentages publishers take? That's a good question as well. I would say that it's usually like 25%. That's like an average deal. So 75% to the writer, 25% to the publisher. I have seen deals that are 70-30. A lot of indie publishers will charge 30%. And so it's 70% for the writers. If you can get if you're in a really strong position to negotiate, you can maybe get an 80-20 deal. So you've got 80% and the publisher's only got 20. But I would say between 70-30 and 80-20 is roughly the splits. Usually on sync, it's usually like 70-30 or 60-40, with the biggest percentage going to the writers. So yeah, there's those are the rates that I've always worked with. And there's one other kind of deal where you don't take any advances. It's called an administration deal, and it's usually that's sort of 10-15%. So the admin, if you do an admin deal, like the publisher doesn't have the copyrights for a period of time, that you can get out the deal quite easily. And therefore you get a better rate. So it's usually 10 or 15% if you get an admin deal. Hopefully that answers that question.
So when you do the 30-70 or 25 deal, it's usually then you get an advance.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
That's very good to know.
Yes. Yeah. And always get a lawyer. Always get a lawyer, because like publishing deals are quite actually quite complicated. There's quite a lot. There's about 6 or 7 variables in a publishing deal, and they're actually more complicated than a record deal in my experience. So getting a music business lawyer that understands intellectual property, getting them to do a deal on your behalf, and all the deals that I've ever done where there's been an advance, I've always factored in the costs for a lawyer. So as the publisher, I've paid the legal bills on behalf of the songwriter. And then what I've done is I've added those legal bills onto the advances. So if I give someone, let's say £10,000, and the legal bill comes in at £1,000, their starting balance is £11,000 or minus £11,000 if it makes sense. So I've always, because one thing I learned when I got working at Sony and I got drilled in to me there was always get a proper intellectual property lawyer to represent both sides, so that if anything was in a court of law, if there was anything went wrong in the deal or people were suing each other, you could always refer back to the contract and it would have been ratified by a lawyer. So that's super important.
Okay. What about another one? So if your publisher does a placement for you, how long then after you break off the deal do they retain the right, so the percentage of the right?
Another great question there. That's like I just said, in the deals, there's one of the variables is called a retention period. And that can be whatever you negotiate. So on average, I think like in the UK, I would say the retention periods are somewhere usually with advances, usually between maybe 12 and 18 years. I think that's the period of time that the publisher has to collect on the songs after your deal is terminated. But that can go, if you're a hot artist and you're in that bidding war, your lawyer can start to squeeze all of those to get the deal. So it depends, but I would say on average about 15 years. Yeah, between 20 years is what most of the deals. Okay.
Cool. Thanks.
All right, brilliant. So I've got another question here. What is the normal amount of money offered by smaller indie labels to a new artist? Now that's a quite a tricky question to answer, because it's really different in a lot of different situations. So there's some record labels like Ninja Tune or Warp or what's the label the Arctic Monkeys are on? It'll come to me in a minute. What are they called? I can remember. Anyway, all of those labels won't sign the records unless they got the publishing in the deal as well. So they'll sign, they're indie labels, and they want both income streams, because there isn't enough money to make on one income stream from an indie label's point of view. So they will. Domino Records, there we go. Hey, brilliant, thank you, Magda. Got there at the same time. This is it. When you get older, your brain just gets full. It's like having a full hard drive. So that's my excuse anyway. So like the indeed. So those labels will only sign artists where they have both rights, the master and the publishing rights, and it's all lumped into one deal. A lot of indie labels now, what they do is they will give you a record deal and they'll offer you like a publishing admin deal. So they'll have the rights for the masters and they'll administer your publishing rights, so that if any sync come through, they're in a position to negotiate on both parts of the copyright, but they don't necessarily own the publishing, but they administer it for a period of time. So I see that more and more now creeping in, and I don't think it's a bad thing. I think it actually works quite well, because if you just got your record label adminning your publishing, then I think that kind of works quite well as a sort of easy fix to make sure that you're collecting all your income, at the beginning of your career. But like indie publishers, I don't know, depends who they are, and depends how much budget they've got to sign things. But I would say somewhere between a few £1,000s and maybe 10-15,000 pounds. I would say that might be like a reasonable, but it's all different. Okay, I think I'm all talked out now. I think I've sort of got to the end of the session and people are leaving now, so it's probably time for me to sign off. But thank you all so much for listening. I really hope that you've learned a few things or taken a few bits of information in. I'll send Olga a PDF with some links in for further investigation. Please take a look and you know, do your own research. Like I said earlier on in the chat, I said, you know, like it is a really important part of your career is music publishing. There's so many different facets that come out of it, and it can generate significant amounts of money as your career goes, and you have more songs out there and more copyrights being played and used. It can generate some proper money for you.
Great. Thank you, Stephen, for your time and for all the information. Please send us the notes, and please remember everyone that next Wednesday is our final meeting online, and your presence is very important because we will meet the 9 Hemi partners, and they will be also presenting the music market of their countries. So I really hope to see all of you there as well. Thank you for your time, and have a lovely evening, and see you next week.
See ya. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Bye bye.
Bye bye. Bye bye.
Night.